Hi, and welcome to another insightful episode on Ben's English Laboratory. Ben's English Lab in short. Now, this episode is the second in an ongoing series titled CID related jargon or registers, words, terms, or terminologies related or peculiar to CID. But before we go into the nitty gritty of what we have today, let's have a quick recap, a revision of what we had or what we looked at in the first class. Now, the first class being the introduction into this topic, into this subject, we looked at the meaning of the acronym CID, and then we considered other facts, after which we looked at five words, five registers under this department of the police force. Now, first of all, we said the CID is an acronym that stands for Criminal Investigation Department or Department of Criminal Investigation, where the C is criminal, the I investigation, and the D stands for department. One of the things we looked at last week, in the last class, was that CID can never be an individual. It can never be a person. It can never be your cousin, your brother, your son, or your father. So it's wrong to say my father, my cousin, my friend is a CID. And the reason for this is that CID is a department, is a unit, a section, a segment of the police force. So it can never be an individual. It can never be a person. Right. So that said, we looked at five words. We explained them and we looked at sentence examples, right? Okay, well, example sentences. Now, the first one we looked at was evidence. Number two was forensic analysis. Number three was interrogation. Four was alibi. And number five was motive. Now, first of all, evidence. We said evidence is a proof or a documentary proof, is a physical or a documentary proof that is used to support a claim in the course of an investigation. Now, forensic analysis is the exposure or the scientific analysis or scientific examination of an evidence in order to unravel, or to establish a fact or in order to solve a crime, right? And number three, we looked at interrogation. Interrogation, the word interrogation simply means questioning, right? So it's the process of questioning a suspect or a witness in order to rake in order to gather information, okay, that will be useful by the CID personnel or by the CID officer. So we looked at number four, alibi. So alibi is a claim by the suspect, usually the suspect, to say that they were elsewhere in another location where the crime was being performed or was being carried out in another place. So finally, we looked at motive. Motive is the reason or the reasons behind an action or a behavior, especially in especially when a crime is being committed. So motive is the reason or the reasons behind an action or behind a behavior, particularly in committing a crime. So in this class, which is the second episode, we want to look at five other words that are associated with the CID. Now, the first on the list today is surveillance. Surveillance. Number two is witness statement. Witness statement is the next. The third is chain of custody. The third word is chain of custody. The fourth term or register is profiling. Profiling. And finally, number five, we have investigation. Right, so let's jump right to the beginning. So we're starting with surveillance. 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 So what does surveillance mean? Surveillance is a close observation, the close observation of a person, a place, or activity, often in secret to gather information about crime. So the close observation of a person, place, or activity, often in secret, to rake in information about a crime. Now, how does this come to mind? Now, before you have officers or CID put up surveillance, there must have been a lead. A lead is a hint, HRNT, a piece of information given to the department that hey, maybe this person is a suspect of a crime, or there's a crime going on somewhere else. So there's a lead given. So, and what is this lead? Once this lead is given, the hint is given. We have profiling done. Sorry, we have the surveillance done, such that the officers now begin to have a close observation, a close monitoring of a person, of a place or activity, often done in the secret, to gather information about a crime. Now, there could be a lead that that a terrorist or a potential threat, a terrorist is will be at so imply at so and so at so time. Now you don't know the veracity of that information, but as an officer in this department of the police, what you're supposed to do is you work based on the lead, and that you begin to put that place, the location you're not on in the lead, put the location on the surveillance, begin to watch out for it. And if it's an individual also, you begin to put the person under close observation, under close monitoring. Okay, when is this person going out? When is this person coming in? All that. So that's what surveillance is all about. It's about close observation of the person who has been reported based on the lead there is at hand. So let's ask example sentences. First, the CID placed the suspect under surveillance. The CID placed the suspect under surveillance, monitoring its movements for several weeks. Now, one beautiful thing about surveillance is that it can go on for as long as possible. It can go on for weeks, for days, for months, and sometimes, depending on depending on the gravity of the matter at hand, surveillance could last for even up to a year, even more than a year, where you have officers of the CID trying to carry out monitoring, trying to monitor the movement of a suspect. Okay, so that is that about the first. The CID places the suspect under surveillance, monitoring its movements for several weeks. And number two, surveillance footage showed the suspect entering the building on the night of the robbery. Surveillance footage showed the suspect entering the building on the night of the robbery. Now, when you have a lead that there is a potential threat somewhere, as an officer of the CID, what you're supposed to do is maybe you go ahead of time, you go ahead of the suspect to set up camera elsewhere, maybe in the area, to have a review where you have all sort of angles. I'm not an officer of the CID actually. I'm just, like I said in the first class, I'm just working based on just as a civilian really, as a teacher, just trying to explain some of these terms in the CID. So it's not a case where I do have a first-hand information or as an intel for CID. So thank you. So right, surveillance footage showed the suspect entering the building on the night of the robbery. Now, like I said, as an officer, you've got the leader. There is a potential threat in a place, it's a location. Now, before that happens, maybe the suspect had planned to do that in 3 days' time. As an officer, based on the lead that you have, you start setting up surveillance cameras in that area, okay, or around the location where you have the potential threat, where you have the suspect, okay. The camera monitors the movement of the suspect, they're going out and coming in and all that. So that's what to show the suspect entering the building on the night of the robbery. So from these examples, I'm sure you've understood what surveillance is all about, that it is the close monitoring of a person, the close monitoring of a place or activity, usually done in the secret. It's not always done in the open. It's done in the secret to gather information about the crime, the movement of the suspect. So that is what surveillance is. So number two, we go to witness statement. Witness statement. Witness statement. So witness statement. What's witness statement? Witness statement is a formal account. A formal account. Now, the formal account in this case Could be two things. It could be a statement that is written down, a written statement, or um, a statement that is collected via recording or video recording. Okay, it could be voice recording or video recording. So the formality in this case is not limited to written experiments or written statement. It's all about, it could either be something written down or collected in voice or in footage. Okay, so witness statement is a formal account given by a person who has witnessed a crime, often used as evidence in investigation. So it is an account that is given by a witness. Who is a witness? Somebody who gives a claim that he or she was present at a scene, sorry, at a crime scene, or is very close to a place where a suspect would buy. So a formal account given by a person who has witnessed a crime, often used as evidence in investigation. So let's look at example sentences, two of them actually. First, the CID took a detailed witness statement from the bystander who saw the accident. The CID took a detailed witness. The CID took a detailed witness statement. A detailed witness statement from the bystander who saw the accident. Now, who is the bystander? A bystander from the lexicon, a bystander is somebody who is present or who watches an accident happen. He's not actively involved, but is passively involved by watching. He or she sees or saw the accident happening. So, for an officer of the CID to gather information about, the full details of their accident, what they have to do is they ask questions, they gather information, they take witness statement, they take statement from the witnesses, the people that saw the accident or whatever the event is. Okay, it could be a robbery. Right, two, several witness statements corroborated the victim's account of their assault. The word here is corroborated, and here we have assault. Here we have victim's account. Okay, don't forget, this is witness statement. Several means many. Several means many. So, like you're saying, many witness statements confirmed. Corroborated, this word is a synonym for confirmed, support. Confirmed, but being in the past, confirmed. Or supported, confirmed, or corroborate, to support. Supported the victim's account of the assault. Assault is a physical attack on somebody, okay? That's an assault. An assault is a bodily attack, a physical attack on somebody. So several witness statements confirmed the victim's account of the assault, which means the victim must have given an account before. And so for the officers of the CID to confirm the account of the victim, they have to corroborate that. They need to back that up. They need to support that. They need to verify the statement or account of the victim by or with, and to compare it with what what the witnesses are saying. So which means that witness statement carries weight in the process of investigation. So number three, we have chain of custody. Number three, we have chain of custody. Chain. About chain of custody. Now, what does this mean? This is a documented process. The documented process of handling evidence. The documented process of handling evidence to ensure its integrity and admissibility. To ensure its integrity and admissibility. Now, it's not every evidence that is admissible in the court of law, okay, or in the process of investigating a crime. It is not every evidence that is admissible, right? There are some evidences or pieces of evidence that you cannot present, maybe because the process that went into the extraction, into the gathering of those pieces of evidence is not genuine enough or has been tampered with. Okay, so the chain of custody is the documented, the written, the recorded process of handling evidence to ensure its integrity and admissibility. Now I'm going to explain what the word admissibility means, but before then, let's understand what evidence integrity is all about. Okay, now the integrity of a witness, the integrity of an evidence equates its admissibility. Okay, if an evidence lacks integrity, then it won't be admissible in the court of law the or in the investigative process. Okay. Now let's look at this picture. As an officer, or you have an officer who has an evidence in his hand, maybe recorded in a tape, or an evidence in the form of a gun, a rifle that is picked from a crime scene. Then the officer picks it, maybe with a bare hand, without having a glove on, a hand glove on, no hand glove on, just goes there to pick the gun. That evidence already has been tampered with. Okay, because you cannot ascertain, it's impossible now to have the genuine, to discover the rightful owner of the fingerprint or the fingerprints on the gun if the officer goes there to use a bare hand to pick up the gun. So, if the evidence is not properly documented in the process of gathering it, then it loses admissibility. So the chain of custody simply is about the process that goes into how the CID officers gather information. Okay, you don't get information or evidences, and then you take them to your house. You don't bother about the time. You don't note the time. You don't label them, and then you just take those evidences to your house, and then your kids start playing with evidence. So as an officer, that evidence lacks integrity. That evidence will lack admissibility in the court of law or even in the process of that investigation. So, what this term is about, what this process is about, is how other officers can take responsibility, can can be very cautious in the process of handling evidence and putting the evidence together. You label evidence, you stamp them. Also, maybe sometimes you could just take proper. It's just about proper record taking in the process of recording or gathering evidence. Now, mostly when evidences are taken, or when pieces of evidences are taken, or when pieces of evidence are taken, what officers do is they take them into officers' evidence room. There is what we call the police evidence room. It's in that room, police officers or just officers in general put the evidence, okay, the result of the pieces of evidence, all right? So nobody takes the evidence to the house, because once the evidence goes to the house, or it could be tampered with, okay? So now let's look at example sentences. One, the CID maintain a strict chain of custody to prevent contamination of the DNA evidence. The CID maintain a strict chain of custody to prevent contamination of the DNA evidence. Proper chain of custody procedures ensured that the evidence was admissible in court. I take that again. Proper chain of custody procedures ensured that the evidence was admissible in court. You see that? So we have an improper way of keeping chain of custody, and on the other hand, we have a proper way of keeping chain of custody, which is why this example is showing that proper chain of custody procedure ensured that the evidence was admissible in court. So as an officer, you go to a crime scene, and one of the evidences, or one of the pieces of evidence that you picked from the crime scene, is a piece of gun, a rifle. Now what you do is you put on your hand gloves, you pick the exhibit, which is their evidence, and then you take it to the officers, to the police, or to the detective evidence room. You keep it in there. Then once it's needed at the court of law, still in the same manner, with your handcuffs on, you pick up this evidence, you present before the court of law. So that's what it's like, what this example is talking about. That proper chain of custody procedures ensure that the evidence was admissible in court. So that is the end of that. So we go to the penultimate word for this class, which is profiling. Profiling is the process of creating a psychological or behavioral profile of a suspect based on evidence or pattern. Based on evidence or based on pattern. The process of creating a psychological or behavioral profile of a suspect based on evidence or pattern. Have you ever watched movies whereby officers of the CID have a lead regarding a suspect, and what they have is just a written information about the physical appearance or what of who or what the suspect is about. Now, then you see officers drawing, sketching out a profile, maybe the facial appearance of what they think, of who they think the suspect is, or the suspect is rather. Now, this could be this usually will be in a situation where the pieces of evidence surrounding the suspect is not very glaring, not very clear to their officer. So what they do is they begin to profile the suspect, begin to draw to get the real picture of who the suspect is, even without having the 100% fact or information about what the suspect is about. So this is the process of creating a psychological or behavioral profile of a suspect based on evidence or based on pattern. In this way, you can have officers penning down things, penning down how a suspect could look like in terms of behavior. How does he walk? How does he, look? Does he wink all the time? Does he walk with his head shaking? Does he deck? Just all of these behavioral patterns or psychological patterns of how a suspect behaves. So all of this, when you begin to put all of this one and two together to pin a suspect into the actuality of the evidence or the lead that was given in the first place, that process is what is called profiling. And finally, let's have example sentences. One, the CID used criminal profiling to narrow down the list of potential suspects. The CID used criminal profiling to narrow down the list of potential suspects. What does that mean? Now, if an officer, just for example, sketched out what they think a suspect looks like based on the list he's been given. Okay. Now you begin to go to the street. You watch every time you go to the street or to the crime scene. You bring out a piece of evidence, the sketch, and then when you see a woman, the sketch is telling you. The profile says that the suspect is a man. So when you see a woman, you let the woman go. When the profile could be about the age of the suspect. It could be about the hair, the eye, the color of the eyes, the shape of the nose, the beards, and all that. So when you see a person without beards, this person doesn't match the profile. You look at the right balls, so the color. Oh, this person has brown eyes, and the lead says this person has brown eyes, no mustache. Yeah, this person has no. Then he is could likely be the suspect. Okay, so the CID used criminal profiling to narrow down the list of potential suspects. Two, profiling helped the detectives anticipate the suspect's next move and plan the strategy. I think there again. Profiling helped the detectives anticipate the suspect's next move and plan the strategy. Now, with the aid of psychological profiling, right, it's possible for officers of officers of the CID to determine the next move, the anticipated move of a suspect. Okay, so all of these are the importance of profiling as a register of CID. Now, finally, we have investigation. Investigation is a systematic inquiry. It's a systematic inquiry into a crime or incident to discover the facts and identify the perpetrator. To discover the facts and to identify the perpetrator. So investigation is a systematic inquiry into a crime or incident to discover the facts and to identify the perpetrator. So the process of searching, going after, of searching, the systematic inquiry, search into a crime or an incident to discover the real fact, and then to identify the people who perhaps committed the crime is what investigation is all about. So, for example, we are four or two or three in a room, or maybe in the course of the night, we discovered that some amount of money was stolen, right? So, of course, the four of us or the two of us in the room will be suspect in the first place, right? Now, the process that goes into the search for who the real thief is what we call an investigation, right? So let's look at example sentences first. The CID launched a full-scale investigation into the mother, following up on every lead. The CID launched a full-scale investigation into the mother, following up on every lead. So you can see the way investigation is used here. Full-scale investigation into the murder, following up on every lead. So no stone is left unturned in this type of investigation. And number two, their investigation revealed a complex web of deceit and corruption within the company. The CID launched a full-scale investigation into the murder, following up on every lead. Two, the reinvestigation revealed a complex web of deceit and corruption within the company. So it is through the process of investigation that we can determine whether we have a web of deceit, a chain of deceit, a chain of deceit, a web of deceit and corruption within the company. Now, on the surface, for so many companies that we have around, for so many companies that we have around, you can have organizations where on the surface they look transparent, but when you have further, when you carry out several or deep investigation, full-scale investigation, you may find out that there are chain or webs or strata of corruption going on differently from what you see on the surface. So that will be it for this class. But a quick recap. So the first word is surveillance. So surveillance is the close observation of a person, place, or activity, often in secret to gather information about a crime. Two, witness statement. A witness statement is a formal account, whether it is written, whether it is a recorded voice or recorded footage, are given by a person who has witnessed a crime. And this is often used as evidence in investigations. Three, chain of custody. This is the documented process of handling evidence to ensure its integrity and admissibility. Four, profiling. This is the process of creating a psychological or behavioral profile of a suspect based on evidence or pattern. And finally, investigation. What's that investigation? Is the systematic inquiry into a crime or an incident to discover the fact and to identify the perpetrator. With this, we've come to the end of this episode. In the next episode, there will be an activity wherein we combine all the 10 words from the first episode and now the second episode. Now, that task will be such in which you read a passage and then you use these 10 words to answer questions based on the given passage. Thanks for staying to the end of this class. See you next time. Bye for now.